What's up? Welcome on in. It's that time of the week, my friends. It is the Sooners on SI podcast here on this lovely Wednesday, November 19th. We're about to get dumped on over the next couple of days in the Oklahoma City metro area, but thankfully, fingers crossed, we should be dry on Saturday for a big one. Number 8, Oklahoma, number 22, Missouri. We will break it all down here per usual. We have the usual squad. John Hoover. John, how have you recouped from the weekend's travels?
It was a good trip, long trip. Alabama, loved it and really enjoyed going down there with everybody. But you know what? It's Military Appreciation Week, and I'm wearing the anthracite. So let's go on this podcast.
Very nice. Carson and I had about 90 minutes more than Hoove did. Excuse me, as we made it through. Did that extra 90 minutes break you, Carson? Because I think yesterday it might have broken me.
No, I've been fine, gotten some convenient naps in here and there, so I'm feeling pretty energized, ready for this final stretch.
Well, the good news is we've always got another arm in the pin. Ryan Aber. Aber, I know you weren't there with us. It was a bummer not to have you with us, but there only needed to be one Ryan that was ready to decapitate someone in postgame, and it was a good thing that you weren't there to be Ryan number 2.
I never do anything like that. I don't know what you're talking about.
You would have handled it perfectly. You can't record. What do you mean I can't record here? It's 10 minutes after the game. You have to record there. No? Okay. Shout out to our friends in Tuscaloosa.
I hope they get
I'm
it
glad I
together
wasn't
soon.
there.
Hey, glad you weren't there for the post game. It was a really fun game.
For that part, let me make sure I'm clear.
Yes, and because of that, no massive real shock, but guess what, folks? Everything that everyone out there had said about Oklahoma beating Alabama, what would that do, has come to fruition. We got a new batch of college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night. Thank you, by the way, to everyone happening in the college basketball world for truncating that bad boy, just making them read us the rankings as it should be. But the Sooners popped up at number 8. If the season ended today, boys, and we brought Miami up as the highest ranked ACC team, despite the fact that they're probably not going to make the ACC championship game, and we brought Tulane into the field, you would get Notre Dame in Norman for a first-round college football playoff game. Pretty sexy. We'll start here. Aber, you weren't there, but when you look at this road ahead, it's pretty simple. Everything we're going to talk about in the rankings discussion is just assuming everyone knows Oklahoma, they have to win 2 games. It's not going to be easy to win 2 games. They have to take care of business. But if they do that, I think there might be one scenario out there in which the Sooners make the CFP as a 10-2 team but don't host. We can get to that here in a second, but it's a pretty clear path. You win 2 games, you're back in for the first time since 2019.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that win over Alabama, we knew we talked about the odds, the rankings, or the percentage chances last week, and just a massive leap with winning that game. If they're able to win these 2, they will be in the playoff. Period. Point blank. End of discussion. Now, like you said, there is a scenario where they don't host a playoff game, but still in a pretty good position for that. And it would take a couple pieces falling into place for that to happen. But going to be fascinating to see, obviously, what happens in the SEC, the way that this last couple weeks plays out. But also, like you mentioned, the ACC, what happens there? Does anybody want the group of 5 spot? It sometimes doesn't feel like it. So just as, we're only in the second year of this 12-team playoff thing, but just incredibly intriguing on a lot of levels, even if there's not a team that, you just say, this is the favorite, this is the team that's going to run away with it this year.
Yeah, I think it's really important, too, that Missouri did pop up at number 22. I can't remember if this happened on the show or in the teleconference afterward. It all kind of runs together. But one of the justifications the committee did use for the Notre Dame Miami discussion was, I guess, like the discussion du jour for this whole thing. But one of the things the committee did talk about was, or at least Hunter Yurchek, the Arkansas AD, who's now the interim but permanent for the rest of this year, committee chair, whatever you want to call it, was that not only does Notre Dame have rolling through and stuff like that, they also beat a Pitt team that very, very recently was ranked in the top 25. So having Missouri, I think, at 22 is really, really important. But you look at it, Carson, and it's kind of everything that we had projected, expected, Your losses being a sixth-ranked Ole Miss. Texas is, if they just lose to A&M, I don't see them dropping like Texas all the way out of the rankings. But then you've got Missouri at 22. That's a big opportunity. Tennessee hanging on at 20. Michigan at 18. It's the schedule did everything it needed to do to bolster a playoff chance. That way, if you're at 10-2, you're pretty comfortable. You're not having to worry about the committee politics.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Auburn, yeah, all of them have aged better than maybe even 2 weeks ago we might have thought. Just seeing Michigan, even though I'm still not sold on that Michigan team, but their record's good. They're ranked fairly high at this point, and they're still in the mix. That goes a long way. Tennessee, that win goes a long way, and not just beating Tennessee, but beating them in Knoxville, huge, obviously. In Texas, who knows? They could beat A&M. That would be a very Aggie thing to happen, to have this awesome season lose to Texas, so that wouldn't surprise anyone. But even if they lose that game and they're toward the 20s of the rankings, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to sit here and deny the talent that that Texas team has. So, I mean, that loss was not a great one. It was a very bad performance by OU, but it doesn't just age horribly. That's a rivalry game. Those things happen. And obviously beating a team like Alabama, I mean, that is the landmark win of the season, of Brent Venable's tenure for OU football since the COVID-19 pandemic. It was massive, and like Aber touched on, they are in if they do their business. Who knows if they host? Obviously, if Bama wins the SEC, that would probably put OU back into the nine slot probably. But that assumes that every team in front of them wins out too, which who knows if that happens. Oregon still has USC. There are a lot of things that can happen. Starkville voodoo, that's a thing. Maybe that gets Ole Miss. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Aber, with Notre Dame having Syracuse and Stanford to close, and Oklahoma having Missouri and LSU, it doesn't seem like the jump potential is going to come from the Irish. So then it just becomes if Alabama wins out, parsing, what does it look like as it pertains to, does an SEC champ Alabama get the nod as like an 8 instead of a 9? Regardless of head-to-head, stuff like that. The cleanest path forward, it's something that I think we all enjoy. Everyone gets to root for their favorite coach in the world this week, right? I mean, you're telling me not only could Lincoln Riley's Trojans walk into Autzen, win, and all but guarantee Oklahoma hosting a home playoff game if they take care of business, it would also put us in discussions for, you're telling me there's not going to be an ESPN executive that doesn't pick up the phone and say, hey, did you see how we got 10 million viewers for Oklahoma and Alabama and it peaked at 14 mil? Could we send Lincoln Riley to the visitor sideline in Norman, America? Click. I think that would be a pretty solid thing to do.
Now, I was on the field a few years ago at Texas Tech when Baker Mayfield made his return there. And I remember the vitriol, some of the language that got thrown around, the security that had to escort Baker out of the stadium and things like that. Can you imagine what it would be like for Lincoln Riley to come back to OU? It would be just unbelievable. We'll see if it happens, but yeah, if it's close to happening, you've got to think that there's going to be some leaning to be like, hey, let's make this work. But it's really going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm with y'all. I think the path for OU not hosting would be Alabama winning the SEC, especially if they were able to win it in fairly convincing fashion. But it's interesting. You sort of referenced it a little bit ago, Ryan, but the discussion with Juracek and that Notre Dame wasn't in the same sort of pod with Miami, and that kept that game from even being talked about, where they focused on the Oregon, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama order. And I think for now it shakes out, really well in Oklahoma's favor. If Oregon were to lose, I think that does pretty much lock up a hosting site if OU is to win these last two. But going to be a fun couple weeks here.
I'm with you guys. We need USC to win. We need Oklahoma to win out so we can get that atmosphere I keep thinking of some of the best atmospheres I've been in. I'll tell you one. I met this past week. Met Danny Boy O'Connor. I don't know if you guys know him. He's the Irish rapper, right? House
Yeah,
of
the
Pain.
Outsider's House.
The Outsiders House, exactly. He's taken over as the executive director of the Outsiders House here in Tulsa. I met him at a book signing last week, and I just happened to throw out there, hey, I don't know if you've heard this story. He lives in Oklahoma now, so of course he's heard the story about Oklahoma's jump around game. When they started playing his song, one of his songs, right, and everybody's jumping around, I said, we're 15 years down the road, and people 17 years down the road, and people still compare everything, noise-wise, atmosphere, everything, to that one game. And if Lincoln Riley comes back to Norman, it's going to blow that thing away. It's going to blow that game out of everybody's memory. I mean, seriously, you're going to need extra security. You're going to need people on the sideline watching the state, because people do not like that man around here.
No, and it would be pretty fantastic as well. Just the storyline, everything there. So a lot to get through, but that is certainly what I would be rooting for as just it's an onlooker. I also think there's an interesting, like, if we get to a scenario where let's just say, I don't really care what order, it doesn't matter what order, but some version of Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, and Georgia. Let's just say those teams are hosting. Then you've got, all right, Texas Tech, those teams are the byes. Texas Tech, you're the 5 seed. Congrats, you get, right now, Tulane. Ole Miss, you're the 6 seed. Congrats, you get, as of right now, Miami or whoever the ACC champ is, whatever. If the 7, 8, 9, 10 is really some version of picking between a USC, Notre Dame, Alabama, Oklahoma, I know that they're just supposed to rank it and go, and they tell us that none of this stuff matters. But you're telling me that they don't get into the committee room and go, okay, we've literally watched USC and Notre Dame play this year. We have literally watched Oklahoma and Alabama play this year. Is there any way that we can just move the rankings around so that we get a 7, 10, 8, 9 matchup, which would result in figuring out if Notre Dame or Alabama is going to host that game and then just sending USC to North? Like, I think that may end up being their out to saying, if this were to happen, yeah, Alabama won the SEC, but Oklahoma won the head-to-head, so we're going to leave OU at the 7 just so that everything works out for that, and we'll see. It'll be really, really interesting over the last 2 weeks. Go ahead.
Ryan, I'll just tell you this. Every final ranking that we've gotten in the playoff era has come with some level of explanation, right? Oh, well, we looked at those teams very closely and one passed the eye test. Okay, well, let's talk about the eye test over here. Oh, we looked at those teams very closely, and that was clearly head-to-head. Well, this one's got more losses. Well, we looked at those teams very closely, and this one had more losses or more data points. It's like they manufacture and maneuver the narrative to go wherever they want it to go.
Yeah, we know that, and I think it is kind of important when you talk about the realm of just purely hosting, not CFP. To get to the CFP, you can win 2 ugly, disgusting football games. Doesn't matter. They win 2, they're in. I do think the offense taking a step forward is going to matter a bit. George Stoya was able to ask Yurchek about Oklahoma and Oregon last night in the teleconference portion. And basically, the question was, did the committee view Oregon as like significantly better than Oklahoma resume-wise, or was it just as simple as Oregon has 1 loss, so they're 7. Oklahoma has 2 losses, so they're 8. Yurchek like talked in circles. But the gist of it was, watching Oregon, we believe that they're good on offense and defense. And then he, regurgitated some metric BS stuff. I think that Oklahoma's offense needs to take a couple steps forward. Just, if nothing else, visually, they can pass the quote-unquote eye test stuff if it gets into a splitting hairs between who's hosting or not. Again, doesn't matter if we're getting into the playoff, but who's hosting or not. If Oregon wins out, Alabama wins out, all this stuff. But I think that's also just really important for Missouri is a really good football team, whether they've got Bo Peep or not. They're a really good defense, and I think that Oklahoma's offense needs to take that step forward anyway. So all this stuff that Oklahoma needs just to host, I think all goes hand in hand with the Sooners being in and putting themselves in the best position to win as many games as possible the rest of the year. And that's kind of something that was asked about a ton. Ben Arbuckle, Brent Venables yesterday at their press conferences. Let's start with the Brent Venables side of it and the running game. Brent Venables was asked, as well as Arbuckle, about the running game. Aber, I thought the most interesting thing is Brent Venables did say with Xavier Robinson, who took that helmet to the knee against Alabama, came back in the game, but clearly looked a little bit hobbled. I don't believe there's anything structural, but that also might not just be feeling perfect 7 days later by this Saturday. Brent Venables did say we're going to have to spread this thing around a little bit more when it comes to the running back room. Here's the problem. Outside of Xavier Robinson and Torrey Blaylock, no other running backs have existed at Oklahoma for a couple of weeks. Now, that's been the correct decision. We've all asked for them to pare down that running back rotation. But when you hear Brent Venables say spread it around a little bit more, does that mean giving 10 carries to Blaylock, 10 carries to Xavier Robinson? Does that mean going to the passing game and the short passing game, touch passes, reverses, speed sweeps for Isaiah Satane or Deion Berkshire? Does that mean a new character re-entering the fold, whether that be Javonte Barnes or Jaden Ott, or there's been a lot of hearkening for Jaron Kanik at running back or Gabe Sawchuk? What does that mean, Aber? What does spread it around?
Well, the answer that I think makes the most sense is what you said about the short passing game and finding ways to sort of make that an extension of the running game. But hey, we can talk about Jaden Ott existing again, and that's what we've tried to do for a lot of this season. So why not bring it up now? How crazy would that be if he was able to finally make some kind of an impact here at the end? Not that I expect it, but yeah, your options are limited. It would sort of surprise me if Javonte Barnes played at this point, given that he's right there at 4, and with everything that's happened with him, you would think that points in the direction of him not being a part of this program moving forward. Taylor Tatum, we've only seen him once. Could we see him there? He was had some, if he's healthy, he had some fairly effective moments last year, but the fumbling was an issue at times and wound up being supplanted there. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think either way, I think it's a good thing that John Mateer has gotten more involved in the quarterback run game. Again, I think that can change the dynamic of how teams defend. And yes, you do have to find a way to at least have the threat of spreading the field with that passing game, even if they haven't done it much the last few weeks.
Ryan, the fact that Ben Arbuckle answered this question yesterday the way he did, frankly, shocked me. I mean, if you don't say something at a press conference that's just blatantly not true. And here's what he said. He said that room is full of a bunch of tough kids who just want to play football. They want to be out there for their team.
Just want to play football, then why does Javonte Barnes keep winding up on the injury list or the availability report on Fridays?
That goes against 180 degrees against what we're seeing with our own eyes. I don't know how tough they are. We've seen them with the football in their hands. They run tough.
Xavier Robinson is fairly tough.
I would say so.
I don't know.
Yeah, but he said the room's full of them. The room's not full of them. There's two or three guys who want to play. That was disappointing. The other guys clearly either don't want to play or are injured. But he did say they're going to lean on the medical staff to try to find these things out. They're going to see how they practice all week. It's a rough part of the picture for Oklahoma if they cannot run the football because Missouri's defense is for real.
It's Carson, I don't know if this is crazy or just a big indictment on how big of a whiff that the Jaden Ott situation has been, that based off of everything we've seen from him, and it was some all-time bad body language from Jaden Ott on the field after a victory at Alabama. It sounds crazy, but I also think it's more likely they talk Javonte Barnes out of redshirting than Jaden Ott becomes like a mega super late season, because like Kenny Brooks came on at like the Texas game, so that's midway through the season. For Jaden Ott to suddenly come on for the last 2 games would be my jaw would be through the floor of the press box at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, it would shock me. I know we had that maybe brief moment at Kent State that he looked at least decent, was somewhat productive in that game, and then Texas kind of squashed everybody's doubts. Just like, yeah, this guy's not going to be a big part. So I would be very surprised that even with them having to lean on their depth, if Ott suddenly becomes this playmaker, I think it is slightly more likely that someone like a Javante Barnes comes up, maybe Taylor Tatum if healthy. Um, but it is maybe a slight silver lining that Mateers looked better on the ground in the last two games. He was great against Tennessee. Bama, he was off and on, but looked really good, obviously, on that 20-yard touchdown run. Good that he's getting his legs under him. Not perfect by any means throwing the ball or with his eyes, but definitely improving. Looks like they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit better through the air. But I'm with what Hoof said about if they can't run against this Mizzou defense, it's going to be a long day.
And it is a good Missouri defense. Missouri defense that forcing turnovers and scoring off that was huge in them separating against Mississippi State so that they could just turn around and say, Ahmad Hardy, take us as far as you would like to go, which he certainly did. I do think that when you talk about like spreading it around, it's way more likely that we see if Robinson's cleared, if Torrey Blaylock, who we know is playing banged up, it's way more likely you just like 10 carries for Mateer, 10 carries for Blaylock, 10 carries for Robinson, as opposed to like giving Xavier Robinson the ball 20 times or something like that. If they're able to run that much, then that's kind of the path forward there. The other piece of it that Ben Arbuckle was asked about was it 3 or 4 questions in a row where basically it was like, we're going to just continue to ask you, Ben Arbuckle, why are you not throwing down the field? Is this a, you're calling it, Mateer's not throwing it? Is this a, you're avoiding calling it because you're scared of it? Is this a, you've been told to not throw anything that could even potentially risk an interception? I thought it was interesting that Arbuckle did an admirable job as a coach, just tiptoeing around the fact that it's a little bit of everything. He talked a lot about just this is how some of the games have played out, but guys, it feels like I'm not saying they need to suddenly throw 7 balls, deep shot, stuff like that. At some point, though, it feels like they do need to try to find a way. And if it's just Satania, because Satania might be the only guy that can get downfield in this receiver room, find a way to try to get him the ball going and just see if you can loosen things up for this Missouri defense. Because I think when you look at this game, both defenses are going to be more than happy to walk everyone as close to the line of scrimmage as possible and be like, until someone proves that they can consistently win over the top, nobody gets any space, and we load every box for both defenses, Aber.
Yeah, and that's just going to be, the reality of things, and they're going to have to figure out a way to make some of those plays happen downfield. I think Satania, like you said, is about the only one that's capable of doing it. Maybe you can find some opportunities for Deion Burks to be involved in that as well. But I think the biggest thing is just finding different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be, 30 yards downfield. Things like that, just finding ways of spreading out the defense overall to open up some more things with whether the short passing game, the running game, things like that. Because if you're as limited as they've been, you have to be, dang near perfect in every other facet, defensively, special teams, things like that. Luckily for Oklahoma, they have been dang near perfect in those areas. But it's hard to sustain that, even, though it feels like, hey, now it's Missouri and LSU, you can catch your breath a little bit. These are still very capable football teams. And as we see in the SEC week in and week out, crazy things can happen. So you've got to stay on that sort of razor's edge of things and not, not get sucked over, like they have a chance to do.
Yeah, I mean, Satania is definitely the guy if they're going to go downfield. Like some of the intermediate stuff that I've seen from Jermichael Carter, I thought he looked really solid against Alabama, kind of making up for what Giovanni Gibson hasn't been able to produce so far. He's been good. Burks still puzzles me a little bit. He has the speed that he should be a downfield kind of guy. We haven't seen that since very early in the season. Part of that is with the style of plays that they're calling offensively. But I think Mizzou's defense, especially their front seven's good. Zion Young, I know obviously OU fans will remember him from last year, returning that fumble for the game-winning touchdown. He's been fantastic, shot up NFL draft boards this year. So they have some dudes on that defense. And I think OU's going to have to get a little creative, maybe use some of those bigger bodies, whether that's Kanik, Caden Helms, Ivan Carrion, get some more guys in there. Because if Mateer still looks as inconsistent as he's been, even if he's been better against Bama and Tennessee, you're going to have to get a little bit creative against good defenses. This offense is far from perfect. It's been bad at times. So I think creativity is the key against a good Missouri defense.
I think this is a really big opportunity against this defense for Ben Arbuckle to shut the fan base up. Every post, every reply, every response that you see, whether it's on social media or on whatever, everybody's like, "This guy sucks as an offensive coordinator." Well, does he really though? This is a good opportunity for him to do that. Now, here's the deal: Oklahoma ranks 82nd in the country in yards per pass completion. That's not good, but guess what? They're tied with Georgia. I don't hear anybody complaining about Georgia too much in their passing game. They're also in the 90s in total yards per play. That's a pretty good indicator that your offensive line has not been good. We're 10 games into the season now. Oklahoma's offensive line has not been good. We've been beating that horse until it's long dead. No, it's a good time for Arbuckle to come up with some usable, reliable plays. Things that you can go to, things that you can fall back on in any certain situation. But creativity and cleverness and surprise. Don't have to pull out any crazy trick plays. Just do something that you haven't done so far, right? That you haven't done all season, or variations on a theme of things that you've done all season. Make it look a little different. Come out of different personnel packages and things like that. Maybe he's tried that. Maybe it hasn't worked. But I just think it's a good opportunity for him to say, no, I'm the offensive coordinator, you guys. I got this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he almost needs to do. Sorry, Ryan.
Go for it.
I think he almost needs to do what Brent Venables does with the defense, and we see Brent Venables be creative in ways to bring pressure, things like that every week. And it's a lot of what you're saying. It's not wholesale new things. It's just little tweaks to what you've already done that find ways to surprise teams, and we've seen that, I think, especially in these last two games. They need to do that on the offensive side and figure out how to sort of capture that kind of energy.
Like the little speed sweep they had with Satania, I thought was fantastic. It was certainly really effective against Alabama. It reminds me of early in the season, they'd had the little touch passes that were just feeding into John Mateer's early passing stats, carving out from the rushing game. Remember that conversation? Like, hey, they're juicing Heisman stuff, but we haven't seen those in a couple of weeks, because it feels like, for me, this is kind of needs to get better. Okay, how do you quantify that? For me, I personally, one of two things. A, if you can get back to what you saw against Michigan, where they had multiple 10-plus play drives, and it wasn't because they were just road great or anything like that. It's because they were able to throw together, hey, Countess Lewis was getting 5 yards on a 3rd and 4. Hey, you're able to get just enough and get things going. Or these last two games, if you could just have traded one field goal for a touchdown, then that is transformational for the last 4 minutes of the Tennessee game. Certainly makes that last 7.5 minutes a little less nerve-wracking against Alabama. If off the Taylor Wine fumble, you're able to cash that in for a touchdown instead of a field goal. That's what I'm looking at. If you want to take that next step and go from you beat Missouri, you beat LSU, you're in the CFP, and teams are like, okay, I don't want to play this defense, to teams do not want to play Oklahoma because this might be the team that gets hot and comes steaming into the CFP. If the offense could just make that marginal improvement, a 4-point improvement, but I think that could be almost transformational for how the committee views them if you're in a tiebreaker situation, and also just the effectiveness on the field on Saturdays and things like that. And the good news is, too, that your defense is still rocking and rolling. Carson, it'll be a very different challenge for the LU defense this week. You've had Traydon Chambliss, Joey Aguilar, Ty Simpson, guys that you're preparing for here over these last couple of games. Now it's maybe Bo Pribula, as Eli Drinkwitz said. Just check in with Pete Nikos or Matt Zenitz. I'm sure that they'll have that, or just watch the availability report. But everyone knows they want to feed Ahmad Hardy. He's been really, really, really good this year. Brent Venables talked about his yards after contact yesterday. That, it feels like, is something that's pretty comfortable for Oklahoma, though, battling a really strong rushing attack.
Yes, I do think you look at Bo Pribula's stats, and it's not eye-popping, it's not sexy, but that offense does run a lot better when he's playing football. He looked very comfortable in the games that he played, obviously put together a good effort against Alabama. Matt Zollers, I think he has a lot of potential, but that's still a very young quarterback, hasn't been playing for too long. So I do think that changes things if Prbula is able to go. But I mean, this is a run first offense. Ahmad Hardy, I think maybe Jeremiah Love has a case, but pretty undisputedly the number one or number two running back in the nation. He's just fantastic. Yards after contact, even against good defenses, he does it. He's just been a star, which I think does kind of lean into what OU does so well. It's hard to run on these guys. Justice Haynes had a big day, but you look at that, that was because of 175-yard run that he had a big day against this OU defense. Time and time again, they've shown that they can stop some really good running backs. Jeremiah Cobb had a couple of good runs. Besides that, it was a whole lot of 1 yard, 2 yard runs, though, some in the backfield. And I do think, like I said, it just kind of leans into what this defense is good at. They're physical up front, and Venables has done a really good job establishing the physicality with this defense. That's what I know Marvin Jones said. That's the most similar thing between this defense and the defense that he played on in Georgia in 2022 when the Bulldogs won the national championship. So, I mean, having that physicality, I mean, I think Hardy's still going to get his, but I don't think he's going to run for 300 yards like he did against Mississippi State. If they could at least limit him, that's the best case scenario for this defense. Keep it low scoring, and OU more than likely finds a way to win.
I like this matchup, man. It's going to be fun to watch. It's a line of scrimmage type matchup where Oklahoma comes in fourth in the country in run defense, and Missouri comes in sixth in the country in run offense. Immovable object, irresistible force, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be fun to watch because I think Missouri, you take out, I think Utah is second in the country in rushing yards, and then Jacksonville State's up there. The other like top five teams, 3 or 4 top 5 teams are all service academies. Right, so Missouri's up there playing that kind of football. It's going to be fun, man.
It's also, Aber, something that Britt Vittles kind of connected those dots, too, that he talked about this rushing attack for Missouri almost in a way resembling kind of an option attack, the way that they've got multiple backs that they're comfortable to give the ball to, as well as certainly when Prbula was healthy, him giving it a go, and we will see if Prbula's there again to add a little extra pop to this rushing attack for Missouri.
Yeah, and also see how, even if he is able to go, how that ankle holds up, because that's a tough injury to have, dislocated ankle that he suffered. I believe it was against Vanderbilt. But this rushing offense is no doubt the best that OU has faced. Michigan, the best that they faced to this point. But they faced, I want to say, I think it's 3 or 4 top 11 passing offenses so far this year. This is the first top 11 rushing offense that they faced, and that's a little bit squishy there because Michigan's right at number 12, I believe. I'm trying to think who's at 11 in the passing offense, but it's one of those teams that OU has faced. So it's splitting hairs a little bit, but this is just a much different matchup, and I think a much different challenge for particularly the front seven, but especially the defensive line. To try to slow down a Missouri running attack that, does resemble in a lot of ways an option attack. Like Brent Venables said, they can pass it a little bit better than most option teams, but it stresses defenses in a way that you don't see very often. And there's a reason why some of those teams, especially the academies, are really successful at it when you have to just prepare for that in a completely different way than you're preparing for every other game. It's not quite that drastic, but there is a big difference.
Aber, I'll see your front seven and raise you the back 4 because that's where it's, to me, really crucial. I think they're going to crowd the box. I think they're going to shut down the run at the line of scrimmage. Missouri, I don't care if it's Matt Zollers, Bo Pribula, whoever, Missouri is going to try to exploit that. They're going to look at those numbers in the back. They're going to run deep shots, play action. A lot of play action, a lot of RPOs, and they're going to try and beat OU over the top. If those safeties and those corners can hold their ground and not get beat deep too many times, you expect it a couple of times, but not too many times, I think Oklahoma can win the football game fairly comfortably.
Yeah, I think the other thing with that is just sort of those two helping themselves and being able to bring the pressure to force quick decisions on the back end and not make Cortland Guillory and Eli Bowen and those guys, have to cover for so long. But I agree that the back end is going to be tested in a different way as well.
after just getting offenses that are very, very pass happy in Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama, Carson, I really feel like the mantra just don't get bored is going to be huge for Cortland Guillory, for Eli Bowen, for Oklahoma safeties, because you have to imagine, especially like on the scripted drive, Drink is going to have a big play action play dialed up, hoping to get Kevin Coleman one-on-one, maybe downfield if someone bites on something. But it's just going to be about, hey, you're not going to get as many chances to make a big play in this game probably, but you can't whiff on your chance by not being mentally sharp, not being locked in, and not being ready for when that ball does get pulled out of Hardy's stomach and kind of put up through the air.
I think tackling really is one of the biggest factors in this game. I know that the Texas game, for example, we saw a lot of missed tackles, guys like Robert Spears Jennings, not to single people out, but I know had a lot of trouble with Wisner in that game, some of the other receivers. Hardy's a beast. He's tough to take down. You've seen it against Bama, A&M, Vanderbilt, some really good defenses that just haven't been able to finish tackles, and he's put up big numbers because of that. And they've got to have learned from some of those games trying to tackle Wisner against Texas, Chambliss in the Ole Miss game. They've been tested, thankfully, against guys that obviously have a lot of burst, a lot of twitchiness, and Hardy has all the physical tools you can want out of a running back, and he's not going to be easy. Like I said, even if this defense plays at its best, I still think that Hardy's going to break off at least a few really good runs. But I think tackling, just wrapping up, finishing, not trying to get too cute. Obviously, if you can strip the ball from him, that would be awesome. But make it an emphasis to get the guy on his back more than anything.
It'll be really interesting. I'll be interested to see too. Tonight, Wednesday, we'll get our first look at the new availability report. I'm not expecting R. Mason Thomas to be back into the fold this weekend. The one that I actually, though, am really much more interested in is, can Jaden Jackson get a little bit closer? He played, 12 snaps on Saturday. I know I had noted this in our live file, our updates, that going through pregame, he just looked incredibly stiff, and commendations to him for giving it a go and being able to put 12 snaps out there, but he was not the same guy. If he's someone that could have made significant steps forward, you're telling me that you have Jaden Jackson to throw into the mix with your David Stones, your Grayson Haltons, who have done a great job up front, obviously, then that comes even more toward Oklahoma's favor and being able to try to slow down this rushing attack from Missouri. And then it comes back around to this. Guys, just in general, I think that Missouri is a really good football team. I know that coming into the year, they were a group that many, including me, were wondering, were they going to be taking a step back? What was that going to look like? There are questions at tackle. There are questions at quarterback. And though Bo Pabula, even if he does give it a go, not going to be 100%. And like we've all said in various different ways, this is not really the defense I would want to be battling with a bum ankle. It will be interesting. I do think this is going to be a tough game, a really, really important game for Oklahoma. And the good news is, though, is they'll be at home. And it's one of those things that they've had the hard to kill moniker, which I think just at surface level plays really, really well on the road. I'm not expecting Oklahoma to come out flat. It doesn't mean that Missouri's not going to play well, but I'm expecting this Oklahoma team to continue to build through, and I don't think it's going to be like a UCF coming out of the bye in 2023 off the Texas win or anything like that as far as a big-time letdown, though I could be wrong. I just, Hoover and Carson talking to the guys after the game and then talking to a Monday night, I didn't really get that impression that this is a group that is suddenly, because they won these two games, they're like, we figured it out. It's a God-given. We're nailed on the playoff. It seems like they know the challenge that lies ahead of them in these next two games.
Yeah, something that Brent has talked a lot about over the past 3.5, 4 years is being able to respond after you have success. And I think that he finds that a particular challenge. And if you look back at some of his winning streaks, they're kind of short. There's not very many of them. The 2023 season, they started out great in non-conference and then lost the two games. He's right. His teams have had a problem sustaining the success that they've had. When they get a couple of wins, the winning streak tends to be over pretty quickly. They just haven't been able to sustain that success. This is that moment where he is the head coach, on into year 4 now. He's maybe figured out ways to motivate and manipulate and move the roster and, move it mentally and emotionally, and just, continue the to play with the edge that they've had, because the last two games they played with an absolute edge. They were the more aggressive team, the more confident team. Going on the road in Knoxville and Tuscaloosa, are you kidding me? Oklahoma Sooners, yeah, they did. They took both of those wins, and so now you've got to come home and be able to kind of recapture that. So that to me is the biggest challenge for OU this week.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that I think it favors them well that they've won ugly the last two times they've been out there. They haven't been perfect
Yep.
outings. It's not like they're coming off some just romp where both the offense and defense were just exceptional. John Mateer knows he has to be better. Ben Arbuckle knows that he has to put together a better game plan. Even talking to guys like Kobe McKenzie, Marvin Jones Jr., those guys singling out things that they can do better, even though they held an Alabama offense that's one of the best in the nation to only 21 points. So I think that helps. And I think also this team, especially after what happened last year, knows that Missouri is a good challenger. It's funny. I think this Missouri team, if they lose to Oklahoma on Saturday, they're going to finish with a worse record than they had last year. This team is a lot better than that 9-3, I think 10-3 with a bowl game Missouri team. Last year, I thought they were kind of fraudulent. This year's team's fought. They've looked really good. They've just come out on the short stick against Vanderbilt, Bama. A&M's the only game that got away from them, and that was because that was, I mean, I don't know if that was because, but that was Matt Zoller's first start as their quarterback. So, I mean, that weighs large, but that defense is good. Hardy is the best back in the conference. I think these players know the challenge that lies ahead of them. For me, I think it would be easier to sleepwalk into next week's game against LSU than this week's, especially with that recency of what happened in Columbia last year.
Yeah, we know this. The best teams, we're looking at you, Kirby Smart, find whatever slight you can find to motivate. And I think that like for the offense, Aber, I don't know if they could sleepwalk through it because I think the offense, despite winning the game, feels like they still have a lot to prove. The defense, this is where I think like having the depth is massive because I don't think this is going to happen. I'm just going to use this guy as an example because I think he's like the last guy that would be. But like, say Taylor Wine, after a couple of really, really strong outings to put the cherry on top of what's been an awesome season for him, suddenly these first couple of drives just not locked in, stuff like that. Well, Miguel Chavis and Brent Reynolds be like, that's cool. You can come stand right by me and you can watch PJ play and you can watch Marvin Jones Jr. play and you can watch Danny Okoye play. And again, I don't think it's going to happen with Taylor Wine, but that's just an example of like, those are the options Oklahoma's defense has if they're not getting the best effort, the most locked in performance. And I think that is really helpful on top of trying to find any way possible to keep fueling themselves going through these last two home games.
Yeah, I think I like the attitude that we've heard, and it's a lot of words, and you don't know how that's going to play out until it's you get a chance to actually see it. But we've seen what we've seen the last couple of weeks. I think they've reacted in the right way, sort of played with that chip on their shoulder mentality. I always think about Michael Jordan could find any little edge to motivate himself and his team during his run. And I think this team is finding sort of how to do that. And that depth that they've added that you talked about, Ryan, I think does shine one late in the season when you're so much maybe healthier than you otherwise would be. But two, able to keep pushing guys who otherwise might just by human nature get a little bit complacent. And Brent Venables sort of, I don't know, bristled is the right word, but said that he didn't feel like his team had any complacency in him right now. But it's natural to do that, especially after coming off of two just sort of emotionally exhausting wins, as much as physically exhausting. And it's going to be paramount for them to keep letting that depth shine through for all the reasons that you mentioned, Ryan, plus just keeping up that health in maybe a way that wasn't possible the last few years.
Should be a lot of fun. 11 a.m. on Saturday. LSU is going to be a 2:30 game that was announced either on ABC or ESPN. I would say this, while I understand it does suck for Oklahoma fans to not get a home night game in SEC play, might get a home night game in the college football playoff. So, to each their own. We will see. there. On the field, not the only place Oklahoma is winning. Off the field, they picked up a big recruiting win yesterday. 2027 defensive back Michael Davis decides to sign up with the Sooners, make his verbal commitment there. That is commitment number 7 in the 2027 class that is already off and running. And Carson, as far as like 2026, 2027, and beyond, we certainly know Jim Nagy and his staff on the field in Tuscaloosa. As soon as the final whistle blows, they are basically on their phone already chatting up a bunch of recruits all over the place, trying to make some last minute gains in 2026 and 2027. Be like, hey, did you guys see this? You think this guy's on the hot seat? Oklahoma's going to the college football playoff. How you like them apples?
Yeah, no, seriously. I think that's a big part of it. Nagy's just taken some of the load off of Venables, the assistants. Obviously, they still have a big role in the recruiting process, but that is big. And I think they're evidently really good at what they do, just looking at the 26 and 27 classes. But that's another thing that, in addition to simply pleasing the fan base, getting winning back into Norman, that's another big thing as far as the recent success they've had, getting wins against Bama and Tennessee. Doesn't appear Brent Venables is going anywhere. He's very much, at the very least, bought himself another year. And that keeps the recruiting classes intact. Obviously, people can still decommit. Like, that's going to happen in the recruiting cycle. But to have the number 1 class in 27 and to have Venables secured at least for another year, probably longer than that, if they look anything like this year's team, I mean, that's huge. Beating out schools. I think it was A&M. It was Penn State. I think it's A&M and Miami 2 and 3 now. Obviously, Penn State, not so much without James Franklin anymore. But to be at the top of the board in next year's class is huge.
Big time as well. Big time for sure for that. And it's also huge for like Governor Stitt, because as we've seen, if you have a coaching search and the governor doesn't get involved or your attorney general doesn't get involved, then what are we even doing here? We've had the attorney general from Mississippi weigh in. We've had Governor Landry in Louisiana all over the place. So I'm sure that Governor Stitt is happy. He just has to focus on one coaching search in state, not just 2 coaching searches in state, for sure. And 2, when you look at this year's recruiting class, whatever it finishes up at, I think that everyone, if you just the most simplistic rankings-based thing, this will be the outlier for Brent Venables in his time at Oklahoma. And why is it the outlier? I think we can all sit there and go, yeah, we knew it was going to be an uphill battle having to recruit against the negative recruiting of coaching staff, hot seat, blah, 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 blah. That has gone away. And look, they're off and running in 2027 and put together a fantastic class there. So should be good. We'll continue to stay tuned, stay ears to the ground, because as Carson in the Sunday offering that we put out every single Sunday had mentioned, it wasn't just Davis that Oklahoma might be close on. There are a couple of guys out there that seem very, very close to maybe announcing publicly that they are locked in with the Sooners. So as always, be sure you're staying on the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com for all of that. Let's step over into the realm of hoops real quick before we dip out of here. It feels like this week is kind of ramp up for both the men and the women. For the men, they've got ORU Thursday night. Then they've got, is it Alcorn State on Sunday? Got
Alcorn,
that as they try to ramp up into, what is that, Marquette that's on Black Friday, I believe,
Yes.
for the men. The women, they've got East Texas A&M tonight, and then they're just kind of on the slow build till they have the NC State and Bedlam happenings in December. Carson, you've had a little bit of time to maybe work your way back and see what was happening on Saturday while we were out and about. Disappointing against Nebraska for sure, blowing that 16-point lead. When you're looking at these next 2 games here on Thursday night and Sunday afternoon for Porter Moses Crew, what are you looking for? What do they need to kind of take this step forward and shake off some of this early season, get to know each other period of this roster?
More than anything, I need to see good front court play. Even in the Arkansas Pine Bluff game, which they ended up winning by the first half, was very close, simply because they weren't very good down low. The bigs for UAPB, which are not that big compared to OU's bigs, had their way down low, and I need to see some of that against inferior competition. Oral Roberts, not the team that we've seen in the past from ORU. They've had some really good squads, not as much anymore. Alcorn State, one of the lower ranked teams in all of D1 basketball. So this is a big opportunity to get get some more work in down low. Guys like Mo Wagee, some of their bigs, Tay Davis. I think they need to really put together good showings against these two teams that are lesser competition. We've seen flashes. I mean, the three-point shooting at times has been great. Nigel Pack looks like he's going to be a good scorer for this team. Xavier Brown, been impressed with him. The backcourt looks really solid. If the front court can get it together, I think this team still has potential to be a quality basketball team.
Do they just need, whether it be Brown, Pat, whoever, do they just need someone to just say, listen, I appreciate that we're all trying to be good teammates here, but until someone else takes the mantle, I'm just going to anoint myself the go-to guy. And would that help maybe some of this, I don't know, like a smoothing over process of everyone coming together and there being so many new faces?
I think so, and I think that is worth noting too that this is almost an entirely new squad that they have. Obviously, Wagee, Dayton Forsyth, returners from last year, but I mean, it is a very transfer and freshman heavy team. I do think somebody like a Nigel Pack that has played basketball for years, he's pushing 25 at this point, so he's been through it. He needs to step up as a leader for this squad, and his play has already been fantastic. I think he should be just if he could be a little more vocal, take a little bit of a leadership role against some of these not so great teams they play before playing Marquette, I think that would go a long way.
Should be good there. Be sure you're hitting up the website. Carson will have you tomorrow night. Our guy Brady will have you on Sunday for everything men's basketball. On the women's side of life, this is not like shocking. I don't think anyone was hitting the panic button by any means, but Aber, it appears the lid has come off for Aaliyah Chavez from deep, which can only be a good thing for the Oklahoma offense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think we're going to look back at that UCLA game as a turning point for her. You have to go through that as a freshman to learn the difference between the competition that you're playing in high school and this is no slight to Belmont, who is a pretty good team to start the season, but there's a massive jump from Belmont to UCLA, and even from practice to UCLA. And I think even though that was a rough start for her, particularly that UCLA game, I think that's something that she really needed to figure some things out and start taking some steps in the right direction. She's been fantastic, both shot making recently, but also distributing she had, I believe it was 5 assists the other day, 3 steals, so better defensively as well. And, I think this was a great time on the schedule to have that UCLA game. I know I've been talking about that a lot, but I think that's going to be a big point in the way that they reacted to that is going to be determinant of sort of how this season grows. And, I think also trying to, as much as you can with a really short roster, develop some depth of players that you can trust off the bench. I thought, Kaya Smith has been giving them some really good, especially defensive minutes over the last couple of games. And Brooklyn Stewart, I think she's going to have a chance to take some significant strides forward. So this is a team that I think still has everything ahead of them, that we thought going into the season, just it was going to have some growing pains.
I don't think anyone was panicking by any means coming out of the UCLA game, but in case you were looking at going, I don't know, UCLA ran away and hid from North Carolina a couple days later, which North Carolina, a fantastic team projected this year, top 10, top 15 caliber opponent. I thought Oklahoma hung with UCLA much better than North Carolina did. Yeah, that was part of Ginny Bronchek said exactly what you said there, Aber, that it's something that not going to bog down Aaliyah Chavez with game plans and things like that in her second collegiate game because she's got to experience it, but also it's about bringing everybody else along too. And I think that December sets up really, really well for the Sooner women. You got that NC State game, the SEC ACC Challenge. That'll be a top 15 matchup. And then I think they'll have another top 15 matchup by the time that Bedlam rolls around because the Cowgirls are shooting the lights out of the basketball. I think
and that's going to be a fun one, isn't it?
It might be 120 to 115, which is going to be fantastic. No complaints for Aber and I. The Cowgirls there, first in 3-pointers made and 12th in percentage, I think. Right? Maybe I got that. Either way, they shoot the 3 ball really, really well. Bedlam, plus the fact that the coaching staffs don't really like each other anyway. On top of that, sign me all the way up for all of that. I feel like for the men and the women, it's this nice little like ramp up period of a couple more landmarks, because I think similarly, Bedlam basketball, the men's side will be a really good game that should get everyone ready for SEC play. So we're creeping closer and closer and closer. So should be good there. Aber's got us for women's basketball this evening. Be sure to head to the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com, for all of that fun. Plenty more content coming throughout the week. You know the drill. We'll have every angle of Oklahoma and Missouri covered, except for maybe Drink's thoughts on the Epstein files. That was an SEC Media Day special that'll just stay at SEC Media. What happened at the College Football Hall of Fame stays at the College Football Hall of Fame with Eli Drinkwitz and everything there. But other than that, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. If you want to take in any of the video content from the week, anything that Brett Venables said, Ben Arbuckle said, any of the players, all that stuff, head to Hoover's YouTube page, John Hoover Media on YouTube. Boys, have I missed anything else before we dip out here for the week? No? Good. Excellent. Next time you'll hear from us will be in the post game for Oklahoma and Missouri. We'll do a lot of standing up on the field, speaking about everything Sooners and Tigers, as it'll be pretty determinative. After that, either everything will have come crashing down, everyone will have jinxed everything, and it'll be a disaster, or the Sooners will be 60 minutes of football away from returning to the college football playoff. They just have to go through not one, but two Tigers to make it happen. Should be a ton of fun. 11 a.m. Saturday. Be there or be square. For Hoover, for Carson, for Aber, for our friend Brady Trantham, thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you guys Saturday post-game for the Sooners and the Tigers. Peace.